All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Health and Wellness Wisdom. So good to be with you on this Monday. That's usually when we have our conversation with Dr. Stewart, which we are very, very grateful to have him allocate some time for us here. He's a busy man, but that was kind of him to be here to share some knowledge with us. So before I bring Dr. Stewart in, I want to mention to you guys a few things, just housekeeping stuff. As you may know, I've changed the name of the channel from Health Tips for Life to Health and Wellness Wisdom. The reason I did that because I get some comments that some people are having a hard time finding the channel. So I figured I'll just change the name. It might be a little easier. Of course, YouTube informed me that it takes about 10 days before this change goes into effect. So just to be aware of that. Second thing is I will be doing probably 2 videos per week for you. If you noticed, we moved from talking about spices to now I'm going to be talking about certain type of fruits. Then I'm going to be talking about certain type of veggies. Then we'll talk about type of meat. Then about type of fat. Then we'll get into the heart of the matter as far as health concepts. And this is where Dr. Stewart comes in because his knowledge is very, very, very crucial for us to understand this. So without further ado, let's bring in Dr. Stewart. Hello, Doc. How are you?
I'm doing very well, Dr. O.
So,
And we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics today because this is the most, when I was in practice, this was the area that I was most successful with.
well, indeed, it's very, very complicated topic. I do not know much about. I did come across in my life of certain individuals that I learned later on that they were suffering from depression, but I never understood it. To be honest with you, I never understood, and that's why I'm also excited to learn about all this one here. So if we are to use the term depression, Doc, what is it? A lot of people talk about two different type. One is clinical and the other one is personal or something like this. I don't quite understand. So
Let me give you a very brief introduction to this. What I'd like to accomplish today is to give people enough of a real understanding as to what depression is and what to do about it so they can walk away and take positive actions to help those people in their lives that suffer from this. Because what we have is 20% of women sometime in their life are going to have a clinical diagnosis of depression, major depression disorder. 12% of men are going to have it, and it is a serious deal.
wow.
Sometimes it leads to suicide. I mean, so that tells you how serious it is. But let's start with what it isn't. I can't tell you how many times I've had people come to my office who said, I was depressed, and so I went to my doctor and they put me on a major medication, antidepressant. And I say, well, what was the cause here? And he said, well, my boyfriend or girlfriend broke up with me, and I felt really upset about it. That's not depression. That's upset. My mother or father died, some close to me. That's a grieving process, not depression. Or my boss was mean to me, or something happened at work. That is not depression. Those things are situational. And if you put someone on a medication, you're now permanently altering their brain chemistry, and they didn't need that at all. If someone died, they need to go through a grieving process. If someone broke up with them, they need to go through a grieving process again and figure out what they learned from this experience, not get drugged. So, and the reason this is so important is if your brain is permanently changed because you went on one of these medications, that means it's forever. And these medications are addictive and very hard to get off of. Under medical supervision, I've taken maybe 100 or more people off of these medications, and it's a nightmare. So, have I seen a few of these people? I've actually seen a couple thousand of the people who are depressed. That's a lot of experience over a 35-year career. And to give you a brief overview, How do you know someone has it? I'm going to go into more detail later. But how do you know someone is depressed? Well, they're lethargic. They have no energy. And they'll tell you so. They move more slowly or they move less. So they're sort of moping along and going, well, we've all seen people like that. And when they sit down, they fidget. They're restless. Or you see weight shifting either up or down or both, and it's telling you the story. And once in a while, they have headaches, they have cramps, they have digestive disorders. And you're going to understand all of these by the time we're done tonight.
Great.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, I was always confused about, I don't know, maybe I had depression one day in my life and passed through without even realizing. I don't know. I couldn't even tell. But it was so interesting is that even sometimes back in my days in the military and all that, now that I am far away from that world, I can think back of those days and see the behavior of some individuals. They are always agitated and always mad, always angry, always reactive, and so forth. And the word will come later on that, well, I feel depressed and all that stuff. And you ask why, and say, well, because of the family issues and so forth. So this leads me to the question: are we talking about the personal stuff that affects individual when it comes down to a depression, or is it because of these issues, the changes in the brain chemistry within the person might end up leading him or her into depression?
Well, you're going to get a definitive answer. You're actually going to know what's going on biochemically and personally based on the presentation we put together today. So let's look at the causes of this, because that's where you just went. Is it chemistry or is it the personal situation? Once we find we've overcome the depression, people find ways to remedy their personal situation. What? You mean they actually are resourceful enough to find a way to overcome whatever the difficulty is? Amazingly, it's typically the case. It's the underlying chemistry that has set them up to be upset by the personal situation. So let's look at what's going on here. Could it be it's in the genetics? Well, here's the evidence. If any one of your close relatives, brothers, sisters, father, mother, aunts, uncles, if they have major depressive disorder, you've got a 300% greater chance of having it yourself. That's a significant number. So we know that there's got to be some other component that maybe it's genetic. And we're seeing things like bipolar disorders that run in families. Going, hold it, that's okay. That's telling a story. Now, unfortunately, it gets more complicated, but the remedies are not complicated, which is good news. Let's go to number 2, because this is really a fascinating one. You know, there are critters that live in your small intestines that actually digest your food. It's called your biome. Mm-hmm. And the things that live there are called florobacteria. Now, they take all the raw ingredients that you put into your mouth and swallow, and they eat them. Mm-hmm. And then the waste products are what are going to our blood system and feed us. They're going, I think the thing is kind of comical, but it's the way it works.
Yeah.
And we find it when a depressed person dramatically changes their gut biome, and we know how to do that, they stop being depressed. Going, what? I'll tell you a real story to let you know the power of this. A little boy is about 7 years old. He got a disease, and it wiped out his entire gut biome. Just killed it all off, which means he was going to starve to death. But they said, hold it, we know how to replenish that by taking portions of the gut biome from other people and repopulating the small intestines. So they had a favorite uncle that everyone just loved. And so he said, look, he's really healthy, happy, and so on. And so they decided they're going to repopulate it with his gut biome. But what he didn't tell them is he had a major stress disorder. He had a severe anxiety. So they repopulated this young boy's gut biome. And what do you think happened? He got the same stress disorder and had anxiety for the rest of his life. Now, I only knew him until he was about 25, but he suffered from this severe disorder that his uncle had that looks like it lived in his gut biome. That's how much this thing affects us.
Wow.
And maybe someday we'll do a show on that because you can alter that. You can starve out the bad ones that cause you problems and feed the good ones and watch your health change, watch your mood change. So there's something in the gut biome that sets many people up for depression. Something else that goes on is you have major neurotransmitter issues. Now, what are neurotransmitters? They're the molecules in your brain and central nervous system that transmit messages. In other words, your heart has to be told to beat. Every muscle in your body has to be told to operate. Everything has to be told what to do, and it's with these messengers called neurotransmitters. Approximately 183 of them in the central nervous system, each one with a function, or some of them have a lot of different functions. But if you don't have enough of certain ones of these, you go to depression. Matter of fact, I spent 23 years as a neurotransmitter specialist looking at how do we dump depression by regulating things like serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, which I'll describe in a minute. I've had any number of people come to me and said, they're the last port I'm going to stop in. I've already decided what concrete abutment I'm going to run my car into at 100 miles an hour if you don't help me. Here's typically the response. 5 weeks later, they said, I can't believe I said that stuff. Matter of fact, I can hardly find sadness. I certainly cannot be depressed. And that was by regulating the levels of serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine in their central nervous system. And that was all done with naturally occurring amino acids, proteins, targeted proteins. So if we take a look at what serotonin, which is the master regulator, does, we're looking at prefrontal cortex activity. It makes you feel who you are. So much information goes through it. It makes you aware. It also helps control obsession and compulsive disorders. Norepinephrine, which is another major one, it controls anxiety and attention. Dopamine is also attention, motivation, and pleasure. And as we get into depression, we'll see that's pretty important stuff. So we also know that you can have hormone irregularities, estrogen, androgens. You can also have thyroid issues. You can also have blood sugar issues that all contribute to depression. So I'm going to come up with some ways to remedy this so that you actually know what to do in a simple 1, 2, 3, 4 fashion to either help the people that have it or to help yourself so you don't have it anymore. So here's a simple test for people to see if they either have major depressive disorder or someone close to them has it. You have to have 5 of this category of 9 things. You have to have 5 of them to be diagnosed. One is you have to have a depressive mood. Life sucks, and then you die. You have to have no interest in anything, and I know we all like big words. Ahedonic means you can't feel pleasure anymore. You just can't feel it. Well, what's life without some pleasure in it? Then there's this thing about weight loss and weight gain. And you watch people who are depressed cycle through. They stuff themselves, typically with short-chain carbohydrates, sugar, donuts, bread, because they numb how you feel. their anesthetics. Going, you wonder why people eat that stuff. Well, if you feel bad and you want to dope yourself up, sugar and donuts and things like that are a good way to feel less. Then there's the thing of some depressed people can't get out of bed. They'll sleep 15 hours. Some will sleep 3. You can't tell which way it's going to go. But when someone has this kind of a problem, they might look at this as, we need to look at depression here. You ever see people doing this? They're wringing their hands, or they sit and they shimmy around in their seats, and so they're restless, and they can't stop it. They walk more slowly. They typically, sometimes they're even hunched over, and they talk more slowly, and you can tell they're having trouble thinking. And when we get into a real discussion of serotonin, you're going to understand why this is occurring. They have fatigue. They're tired all the time. Well, okay. And they'll say things like, I'm worthless. And I have so much guilt about 10 things they did in their life that they wish they hadn't. And they can't stop thinking about it. It's like it's a compulsion to think about how worthless they are, how nobody wants them around.
So this last point, Doc, brings me to the idea of, are those people living in the past? And if they are living in the past, will it be fair to say that depression probably is the result of those individuals not finding a meaning in life and just tied to the past?
That is an excellent observation. People live in one of three. Typically, people live in one of 3 tenses, verb tenses. The past. Okay, so they focus so much on what went before, and they think about it over and over and over again. Then there's those, and that leaves them pretty well stuck as to what are they going to do in the future, because they can't think about it. They don't have a plan. They don't have goals. They can't talk about the upcoming trip that they're so excited and thrilled to be going on, because the future isn't real to them. Then there are those people who live only in the future. Well, someday I'm going to, but they don't seem to get a lot done. And they don't benefit from the mistakes and the learnings of the past. Then there are those people who say, I only live for now, and they mean it. That means they haven't learned what to avoid or what to do. They don't deal in terms of consequences because they're only alive at this moment. When I was doing a lot of interviewing for executives in high positions like CEOs or C-level people, because I did several hundred of those, if that executive didn't have all 3 verb tenses, I spelled it out clearly to the hiring authority what that really means. It means they are not going to be an effective executive because they're not going to be an effective human being. You have to take information from the past. You have to see how it applies right now in terms of a plan going forward and how this is going to turn out. So it's shifting through all 3 of those verb tenses on a constant basis that makes a human being truly effective. However, if you're depressed, you're stuck in the past and how I feel right now. Not what am I going to do right now? How do I feel? I feel terrible. And something that most people don't know is, who haven't been depressed, is depression hurts. And you wonder, well, how come so many people kill themselves who are depressed? It is painful to the point that you'll do anything to get out of the pain, including hang yourself or shoot yourself or run your car into something at high speed. There's a whole lot of suicides that go undeclared because it looks like an accident. Yeah, right. Okay. And that's actually the last one of these symptoms. If a person talks about dying or is thinking about it, And I say, okay, you've been thinking about it? Do you have a plan? Now, if they have a plan as to how to do it, they need a doctor who can put them in a hospital facility to get them beyond that, because they just might do it.
Hmm.
I know a number of people who did do it, and if we had known ahead of time, we could have prevented it.
That's very
But you
interesting.
talk about a tragedy to people, to the family
Yeah.
that's remaining, or to the friends that are left behind.
Yeah.
It is horrible.
Wow.
And so it's not just a tragic event for the person who did it. It's a tragic event for all the people who cared about him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always hard. Yeah. Now, will it be fair to say, for example, like in our society, which we do have a lot of that. So you've said to yourself, here is a society that is considered by standard very rich. Okay, it's like we don't experience what some other individuals in some sort of underdeveloped countries are experiencing. Yet you don't see the level of depression in those parts of the world versus how it is, at least for us in our society here. And this is why the medication comes in. Doctors only prescribe medication, put people on Prozac, whatever medication people take, only to make the matter worse. So my point in this, can society where one lives make a difference when it comes down to depression?
Absolutely, yes. For a
How
number
so?
of reasons.
Yeah.
One is many cultures, family really is paramount. You take a look, for example, at Chinese culture. Family is everything. And individuals know that they belong someplace. They're part of something, as opposed to a whole lot of American culture where people see their relatives once a year for 3 or 4 or 5 days, and that's it. They're on their own then. And without going into too much of that, what that does is it leaves you not belonging anywhere. Then you take a look at the divorce rate, and you go, holy, it's 52%. People are coming from fractured families. And no one enters a marriage so they can get divorced.
Yeah.
Or have this horrible trauma in their lives. But the majority of Americans experience it.
Mm.
And it's not that they're depressed, it's that they're truly upset by the whole circumstance, and it's long-term misery, and that's when they put them on medications and damage their brains. But we're going to do a deep dive into that in just a minute.
And can you, by the way, just quickly, can you add immigrants to this category? I have one of our viewers, Liang. He put that. Let me share the comment here because I found it very interesting. Given America, it's a country made out of immigrants, and he's added, immigrants are reluctant to visit doctors for depression because Anglo doctors have no idea what it's like to struggle in the first world as an immigrant. So does somebody who is an immigrant could fit into this category or fall into this category?
Yes, it certainly could. Wow. The issue that they face is they're now away from their culture. I mean, they might have some other their countrymen around them, but they're now in a strange place where they're not really wanted. They're going to be at the lowest level of income. They're going to be chased by the police. And then you talk to these people, and I've talked to several of them, and they say, I'm looking over my shoulder all the time. I'm afraid all the time. Going, yeah, I think I get it. You could be deported any second. Although I guess people aren't deported anymore. I don't know that. But if you're an immigrant and you go to a doctor, they really only have one choice, and that is to give you one of these drugs. They're going to give you Lexapro or Zoloft or Wellbutrin or Cymbalta or Prozac. And all of these are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which I'm going to describe in some detail. We talked a little bit before about what are neurotransmitters, the central messaging. Well, what happens is you have a nerve cell, and it has a bunch of receptors in it, like a key fits in a lock. And you have another neuron that is going to send messages across. And once it's received here, it sends the message along. Now, this is a very simplistic explanation of it. But if you don't have enough of these neurotransmitters, and we really find that that's the best solution for depression, is to increase the amount of serotonin and so on. Your brain, your prefrontal cortex doesn't work well. It means you can't really pay attention. Your digestion is profoundly negatively impacted. You don't digest food well, so you're not getting the right nutrition. And the net effect of that is you feel helpless, hopeless, and worthless and guilty. And you go, well, what about these medications? Don't they work? Well, because I followed it for so long and was heavily involved in working with depression, what we found is, you ready for this? Of every 100 people who were taking one of these 5 major medications, 7 were helped. Out of 100. And this is a well-replicated medical study. You mean only 7 were really helped by the medication? It was such a scandal, but it was covered up. And then people would come in and under medical supervision, we'd get people off their medications and put them on a set of targeted proteins that actually raise their level of serotonin, raise their and serotonin is where happiness lives, that's where sleep lives, that's where digestion lives, that's where paying attention lives. And we'd raise their level of dopamine, which made them happy. And going, this really does work. We didn't take care of the personal problems. We didn't take care of them fighting with their husband or wife. We didn't take care of their nasty children or their job situation or their mother and father didn't love them. We just raised the levels of serotonin and dopamine and watched the symptoms go away. It was far and away the finest program I've ever seen for alleviating the symptoms of depression. Well, then there comes up what about talk therapy? Well, once the brain was available, they were able to talk about the issues and solve them. They had no longer had the biological preset situation where they had to be depressed because they didn't have any choice about it because it's chemistry. Once they didn't have the depression, a whole lot of their problems were automatically disappearing. Or they could talk about them and figure out what to do about them with some help. So about the time we'd get this going with the serotonin and dopamine levels, talk therapy was enormously successful. And I can't really tell you how many, because I did it for so many years, but how many people said, I can hardly even feel sad anymore. Depression is gone. But there's some other things that you can do that really are big help. But you got to understand a number of background things that contribute. Remember we did the show on sleep?
Yeah.
So depression. What's the number one thing outside of medication or outside of these amino acids to get? Restorative sleep. So many of these people have a sleep deficit and they say, well, I sleep for 3.5 hours a night. You need 9 to be at your peak efficiency, to feel your best. So if you want to help set the stage, you need to get quality sleep. Not more than 9 and not less than 8. But that means you actually have to train yourself and discipline yourself to go to bed at a decent time. And so many depressed people like to stay up and watch a movie, or they would like to watch, I can't remember what it is, YouTube or Netflix or whatever, because they can be distracted away from sleep, which is sometimes painful because of the dreaming that they do. The next thing is, if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates, you're drinking a lot of caffeine, which we said in the sleep program, you're not going to get restorative sleep. And the carbohydrates are a guarantee of depression or sadness because of the sugar deregulation. If your sugar is going up and down like this, one of the effects is going to be that you feel sad. Well, sad is a contributor aimed in the direction of depression. And if you've got depression and you're doing that, it's really bad news, because it's going to exaggerate your symptoms. A number of people have had traumas. They've been physically assaulted, they've been sexually assaulted. They come from homes that they show no affection, or they're unwanted children, or they've been brutalized in some other way. That's where counseling really does do a good job, especially if the counselor is dedicated to solutions, not you reliving the situation over and over and over and over again. Tell me about how you feel. Tell me about how you hurt. That is not helpful counseling. As a matter of fact, the Veterans Administration found that the number one thing they were doing for PTSD with the soldiers that they were attempting to prevent from suicide, they had them talk over and over again about the trauma. It increased the suicide rate dramatically. Now, I understood the thinking that went into that from the professionals, but when the statistics came out, they needed to change their program, to not talk about it anymore, but to take action to do something about it, to empower people to move forward in their life in spite of whatever's going on. Another thing is, if your thyroid doesn't work, or if your testosterone or estrogen levels are fluctuating wildly, you're going to feel bad. It's another real setup for depression, for depressive symptoms. And so a blood test that tells you all that is going to give you a real indicator as to, do I have a hormone problem? And by and large, hormone therapy has become, the doctors are pretty darn good at that, especially if they track the blood work over time. They'll get you regulated pretty darn nicely. And then if that's not a factor anymore and your symptoms go away, you didn't really have depression, you had these chemical issues. Here's another one that's harder to do than you would think. Most depressed people I've talked to had toxic people in their lives. Let's talk about who we hate. Let's talk about all the atrocities going on in the world. Who can we criticize today, including you? Going, well, do you need those people? Well, they're better than nobody, because if you have nobody, you're going to increase the chances of suicide. But but these people are good to get rid of. As you can comfortably replace them with anything else, you're in better condition, because they tend to bring you down and help your system emphasize depression by keeping you constantly upset and constantly threatened and fearful, because they turn it on you sometimes too, or they're just toxic to you and mean to you. I've been in a situation where the family was so toxic for children that I had to involve the state government in terms of taking the child away permanently. And the child survived and thrived then. But some families are that toxic. And I can't tell you how many times I really don't know it anymore. How many times that it came up of, well, can I divorce my family? Well, are they harming you? Are they causing severe emotional upset constantly? And when they answered their own question to yes, they said, I think I'll stay away from them. Or I don't need to go to Thanksgiving dinner with them and be traumatized by the event and take weeks to recover.
Mm.
They say, well, everyone will be upset with me. Yeah, well, you won't be upset with yourself. And it sure seems to me that we're here to take care of ourselves first. And when we're well taken care of, we can then assist other people in taking care of themselves. But if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not much of a resource. One of the things that has come up, if people found this on their own, once they decided that they were going to not hang out with or not spend time with, they're actually going to avoid these negative people, they had to find some groups to be a member of. Then we wonder why church groups are popular. I don't wonder. And many churches are into a mission. There are those people who get together just to have fun.
Yeah.
Well, how bad would that be?
Yeah, you're right.
Or some groups get together for the service of humanity. What you have is comradeship. You now have goals that you couldn't figure out yourself before, but you can take on these goals, and you're in a much better position to enjoy your life and overcome some of the situational issues. And if we get the chemistry right, you're now in a position to really take advantage of this and start to truly enjoy your life because it's meaningful.
For this one, Doc, I find myself, and I'm going to just share it with the viewers here also. When I get up in the morning, I'm really excited because, you know why? It's because I said to myself, today, I might share something with my viewers here on the channel.
Yeah.
And that feeling in itself of, something to give, something to share, knowledge of sort, it gives me almost purpose for my existence, believe it or not. I forgo.
No. Purpose
I
is,
forgo now.
oh God, purpose is so important.
Washington and all that. I let go of that. They don't mean anything to me anymore. What it means to me now is to share this knowledge with people that really, truly appreciate it. And I find satisfaction in that.
Purpose is almost at the top of the list as to things that will really change the quality of your life.
Yeah.
You're here to do something. I put it in the realm of self-expression. The Henry David Thoreau quote of, most men lead lives of quiet desperation and die with their song unsung. They never really appreciated their life. They never really got to self-express what they wanted to express while they were here. Whatever was inside of them that really would make their life worth living, they never got to show it. And I think that's at the heart of the sadness I see in American culture. And I see tremendous sadness and tremendous giving up. Not at the 20% level, not at the 12% level. I see it at the 70, 80, and 90% levels. And you take a look at most people, and they look glum. They're not laughing and having a good time, saying how much they love their family, how much they love their life, how much they love their job. When was the last time you heard somebody talk like that?
No.
Yeah, you're going.
No, because we are in a culture that is individualistic. It's all about me. It's all about the status in society, the wealth, the materials, and the inner thing, the spiritual inside. It's almost unseen for us, for some, not all. I shall not generalize, but I think that's part of what the problem here in the United States. This is why
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that's the way I see it.
When I was heavily involved with dealing with depression, I bumped into a group called the Society for Slow Living. You're going, oh, this has to be interesting. So I did a deep dive into what it was. And there were groups all over the world, starting in Italy, which I find very interesting. What they did is they said, I'm slowing everything down. I'm going to know all my neighbors. I'm going to have a relationship where I know my neighbors, their children, what their children are doing, and I talk to several of them every day, because after dinner we take a walk in the evening, the whole family, and talk to everyone who's also outside talking to their neighbors.
Mm.
And there's a group in Japan. A matter of fact, they were started springing up all over the world.
Mm.
And so they felt connected. And so the pressures and tensions of their work, of the society, of the government, or the loneliness, they weren't lonely anymore. Now you could say, isn't that kind of a superficial? I know my neighbors, I know their children and what they're going. Yeah, but that's who we are.
Mm.
This isn't. We need to be connected to a community to overcome the loneliness and the sadness. We evolved as a tribe.
Yeah.
Or in a tribe, and the importance of tribal thinking is paramount to the health and well-being of human beings. Matter of fact, I can't remember the name of the study right now. I just looked at it 2 or 3 days ago. But it's societies where they emphasize tribe, and they lived the longest and had the least amount of heart attack, stroke, cancer, and all these other degenerative diseases. I think the average age was like 87 or 89, as opposed to the United States, where the average man lives to be 76 and the average woman lives to be 79. They almost didn't have anybody who died that prematurely. And they had several members of their communities that lived to be over 100.
Wow.
I think Okinawa, there's a big community in Okinawa, another one in Japan somewhere. And I'm not grouping Okinawa and Japan as the same country, although I guess
Of
Japan
course,
claims it.
Let me share this, if that's okay with you, because I do have sometimes some of my viewers put a question in, and since I always look at this as some sort of back and forth conversation for all of us to learn, I usually put just a question. John Julia Jones wrote, and she's the question, Doug: if body, mind, and spirit is not happy within it, it creates the first form of depression. Do you agree with this statement?
I completely agree with that. Now we have to please consider the other biological functions to this as well.
Mm.
But that goes under body.
Yeah.
And do we want all these things to align? Could you put the question back up? That's an interesting question.
Certainly, yeah. Right there.
Mind and spirit, body, mind, and spirit. And I don't think I can pronounce her name.
John Julia Jones. John
Julia
Jones.
She's hit it right on.
Indeed.
And she even got it in the right order. Your body
Wow.
has to be ready to be happy. Your mind has to be free of traumas and bad events that are currently going on in your life. And your spirit has to be showing forward as some form of self-expression. And most typically, it's contribution to your family, contribution to other people. But that's right, body, mind, and spirit. If they're not happy, it is depression. It's depressive-like.
And this is something in Western society they don't teach, like in medical school and all that. They don't. I never heard of a doctor, sort of an MD, addressing something like this.
I have to. Once upon a time, I was so angry with the medical community, I wished bad things on them. But then since I worked for about 25 years with medical doctors, I got to see how difficult their job is. And they're trained basically by the big pharmaceutical companies to peddle pills as solutions to everything. Well, and then I started associating with younger doctors who said, that model doesn't work. Yeah, they taught us to peddle pills, but we also have access to all this stuff on the internet and all the complementary medical things. So I think it's changing, and also patients are demanding something else because they have access to shows like this one. where someone comes and says, "Oh, there are real solutions here that doesn't involve a pill that's going to damage your brain." And how about we get all the factors lined up? Yeah, get adequate sleep, eat better, deal with counseling and traumas, get your hormones regulated, learn to overcome something like learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is where parents are so discouraging and critical of their children that their children give up early. Going, wow. They say, "There's nothing I can do. I'm helpless. I'm hopeless. I'm incapable," because they've been told that so many times from the criticisms and feedback that their parents gave them. I ran into some. I ran into some research about 40 years ago that changed my life and my career. No, 30 years ago. It was not criticizing anybody ever under any circumstances, and not complimenting them either. And I found this was remarkably powerful in terms of how people started to perceive themselves in a much more positive light. I'll give you an example. I was working with a 5-year-old who had some crayons, working in one of those worksheets that has the black lines of a dinosaur. Fill in the colors. And what I said to this child is, "You have colored the dinosaur brown and green, and you stayed inside the lines, so you only colored the dinosaur, not the surrounding paper." And the child said, "Yes, I did that." So they started a steady diet of that. The child now grows into an adult where they feel confident and competent in terms of, I made the observations myself. I wasn't weakened by, "Oh, you're such a good artist," which is utter BS. And so that technique alone is the foundation of a really healthy person, a person who believes in themselves and is not helpless or hopeless. They're self-empowered. And I taught that to any number of teachers, any number of parents, and all of them who engaged in it reported back about how positive it was. And so I'm happy to say that there are now hundreds of people who've been exposed to that, and the results are almost invariably good. Matter of fact, I recently saw somebody who was a child when I taught it to them, and now they're almost 30, and going, "This person is phenomenal." They're so self-confident. It's like if somebody says something negative to them, like, "You did that poorly," the person's response is, "Are you crazy? I just did it. It wasn't poor or anything, but I might improve on it." But they never took that stuff personally because they didn't have a background of all that leads to depression. So I think as I worked with depression over the course of my career, which is more than 35 years, I found it was something that pretty well assured success. And it was finding an accountability partner. Now, it could be a professional group, and we saw things like Alcoholics Anonymous or Drugs Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, who they always have an accountability partner. And what this more or less assures is going to happen is if you say you're going to do something, such as, "I'm going to eat better," or "I'm going to go to bed earlier," and you report to this accountability partner, you're much more likely to do it. It's like it goes into the 80th percentile as opposed to the 15th percentile. So, "Well, I'll do it on my own." You didn't evolve as a creature, or you didn't adapt as a creature to live your life alone. You live in a community, and the community has standards, and to fit in, you need to comply with the standards of the community. And if you give your word on something, you need to comply with that as well, or you're poorly thought of. and we don't want to be poorly thought of because we're members of a group and our reputations precede us. Dr. O, did that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's because I know I can apply it just on the level here on the channel with the
Yeah.
viewers that I have in this community here. So on both this one and the other channel, and
Yeah.
I kind of always make it clear, we guys here as members of the community, learning from each other. So respect will be one of the, no need for this pointing fingers and so forth. And everybody was very respectful of that. So when
Yes.
sometimes I'll get some nasty comments from somebody because they like, and you know what my response is? I forgive your ignorance. Simple as that, and move on.
That's the right attitude.
Yeah, no need
Oh.
for,
I know that the feedback generally has been remarkably powerful and positive.
Yeah, it's because they appreciate it, Ross. And this is the reason why for me, literally, when I get up, I'm really getting up very excited for the day, because I say to myself, I don't know what I'm going to be sharing today with my viewers, but it doesn't matter. It's a knowledge that I said, at least I contributed to someone's knowledge in some parts of the world. And that gives me meaning of purpose.
Yes.
For why I'm here.
We can't emphasize that enough. Having meaning, having purpose, doing something that you really want to do, that makes your life, that allows you to sing your song, whatever it is.
Yeah, Phil was right. He put the term for it. Check this out, Doc. Look, this is Phil.
Attitude is everything. Hey, Phil.
Spot on.
Right on. Attitude is everything.
On.
And how do you keep adjusting your attitude? By doing something that truly is self-expressing to you. Something you really want to experience. And most people, not all, but most people want to contribute to the lives of other people.
Yeah. Well,
how good is that?
Yeah. Here's another one here, Doc. If I may
ahead.
quickly share. Check this out. Enforced compliance is quite cruel these days. Even YouTube is doing that too. Absolutely correct. And as a matter of fact, the way that I found this very interesting, Doc, is because we started having members of society that, rather than taking stand, they just falling into compliance ignorantly and nilly-willy, without asking or questioning themselves. And to me, it's a hollow existence. That's the way I look at it.
I think I told you, Dr. O, I joined a political action group.
Yes, you did mention it. Yep.
And the political action group is to give people information about what each one of the political jobs is, and then give the history of each of the candidates, and give each candidate's point of view in a completely reporting neutral fashion, so that people can actually have quality information and make a decision on their own about what kind of government officials they want. And going, yeah, let's respect people. It's no wonder to me that so many people are sad, helpless, hopeless, and say there's nothing I can do about the life situation here or wherever else they are.
Yeah.
We talked about this concept of learned helplessness. Our educational institutions have successfully done that. Our governments have successfully done that. Our churches have successfully done that. Our media has successfully done that. So is it any wonder that people say there's nothing I can do? As opposed to, there's a lot that individual people can do. And you talk about getting energized and have purpose.
Yeah, that's how I find it. And I'm really won't trade this for whatever, because I just find meaning in it. Because to me, the idea of, okay, what is my purpose? What am I doing here in this life? If I'm to just wake up, eat, and sleep, then what kind of existence is this? So
it's a meaningless existence, and then you just float through life with no purpose.
Yeah, and I refuse to live like that.
Let me give one parting shot here.
Sure.
I can't emphasize enough the importance of having someone who's an accountability partner. But I need to define what an accountability partner is. This is not someone who says, well, you didn't do what you... No, there's no criticism here. There's no advice giving. Well, what you need to do is, if you're going to ultimately respect somebody, you ask them the questions so they can figure out the answers to their own issues. You don't give them solutions because your solutions might work for you. Sure. But if a person comes up with their own solutions, they typically and surprisingly come up with ones that actually do work. I can't tell you how many times I'd ask someone a question and say, well, I don't have any idea what to do. And I'd say to them, wildly hallucinate an answer. Come up with the most wild, outlandish thing you can think of and just say it out loud. And they'd go, and they'd spew wisdom. And they come up with solutions that worked for them. Like, okay, I have a bagel and coffee with sugar for breakfast. Maybe I could actually have eggs or bacon or something that's going to give them protein as opposed to short-chain carbohydrates and junk. It's not like people don't have this information. Their brains have never been stimulated in such a way that they actually can come up with things that work for them. They just don't think about them. You know, I think you and I have talked about this a number of times about people go to what's familiar. And we wonder, how come people eat junk food in the morning? Because they did when they were kids and their parents did. That's what they're familiar with. Did they know better than to do that? They actually do know better, but they can't rearrange their thinking and their behavior to start doing something better for themselves. Whereas an accountability partner who says, well, what did you have for breakfast today? And they say, well, you know, I had a bagel and sugary jelly with high fructose corn syrup. And going, and they heard themselves say it. Their accountability partner didn't say, well, aren't you lazy, crazy, stupid, bad, and ugly for doing that? They heard themselves say it, and they start to self-regulate, which is really where the power is anyway. After all, who owns your life? And if you own your life, you're not going to be depressed. You got another question coming in?
No, I was just, when you mentioned that, somebody said he put, I had eggs for breakfast this morning. And I was typing, I had eggs and cheese and filet mignon for my breakfast.
That's a wonderful breakfast.
That's what I eat.
That is a fabulous good breakfast.
I do eat meat every day except on Sundays. So,
well, my typical breakfast is I steam a bowl of vegetables, typically broccoli, asparagus, and bok choy. I put a nice dressing on it that has no canola oil in it. And I eat that first. And then I typically have fish. And my favorite one is sockeye salmon. And I cook it with an egg and put a sauce on, and that's breakfast. But I finish the vegetables, then have the fish going, and I feel great for hours. Yeah. Now I vary the fish and I vary the vegetables because I want the variety. But now I've gone to 2 meals a day because I eat that way. And my energy has never been as good as it is right now. Of course, when I was young, I ate my mouth was a garbage can. And today that doesn't happen.
So, well, we are so grateful, Doc. Truly appreciate you. Again, it means a lot that you allocated time for this channel to share this knowledge, because I'm sure people do not know about this channel yet. It's getting there. But again, the purpose of it and the objective is to share knowledge with you all, because to me, that's the purpose of what we hear. help each other. And if a
You know,
knowledge is shared,
one of the
that's what,
distinctions here is
yeah,
because you know you see any number of real experts on TV,
yeah,
and one of the things that makes us something unique is actually lived a life of practicing with thousands and thousands of people and had to come up with solutions that worked.
yeah,
Because the demand is if they come to see me and pay me, it's going to work. And by the way, if people in our listening audience want to know about this amino acid, serotonin, or dopamine, if they'll email us, we'll give them a place that they can go and get information about it. Because it's available virtually all over the United States now, thanks to
yeah,
telemedicine.
yeah. Well, I do intend to, like I said at the beginning, I'm moving on in stages. Once we talk about the type of fats, for example, type of meats, why is that important? Then I'll move into talking about vitamins and supplements. But with that, the conversation with you about understanding the importance of that comes in, and that's usually how I intend to, or I plan
Okay.
on doing this one here. So I look forward to seeing you next week. We'll decide on the topic. If you guys have any topic in mind, just type it in the chat box, or just leave me a comment and I'll check it out for next Monday. Usually we do these lives every Monday at 19:30, and also I will be releasing videos twice a week on Sundays and Thursdays. That's so far. Then I'm always open to your suggestions, whatever you may have. So once again, thank you very much, Dr. Stewart. Truly
Dr.
appreciate it. And
Dr. O, it's my pleasure.
look forward to seeing you next time. All right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation with Dr. Stewart. He's a wealth of information. The whole reason is for us to learn. So I am hoping the channel will grow. But again, it's not of great importance to me. What's important is that the information you are getting here is of use to you. People will find it. That's their decision what they want to watch. For me, I'll just do what I feel comfortable with and excited about. This is one of them, and I look forward to seeing you next time. As always, remember, your health is your best asset. Till next time. Bye bye.